answer to everything I asked you. Your generosity was great, always wanting to lend a hand whenever possible. You had a great sense of humour and could always make anyone laugh. I'm not sure how many countries you had gone to, nor how much travelling you had done, but I knew it was a lot. I remember one time you told me that you were determined to go back to Canada sometime soon. You always had a dream. You were a great and generous grandpa, but most importantly, you loved us very much, and we loved you just as much. We love you, Grandpa.
Today I'd just like to read a psalm that I know is one of Grandpa's favourites, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Amen. For their presence here today to pay your respects to our father, John Kenneth Sedger, to mourn his passing and to celebrate his life. Personally, I'm a great admirer of the great Swiss psychologist and philosopher Carl Jung, and Jung captured, in my view, as good a definition of life as I've come across. Life, he said, is a luminous pause between two great mysteries. And with that in mind, it's an honour and a privilege to share with you today just a brief sketch of Dad's luminous pause. Dad was born in 1931, just a year before the height of the Great Depression in Australia, one and only son of Phyllis Weatherspoon and Jack Sedger. He spent much of the early part of his life with various in-laws and relatives, as his father had to travel where he couldn't find work, a situation in which many families at that time would have found themselves, I'm sure. So he moved a lot in his early days, from Blackheath, where he was born, to Manly, Burwood, Epping, and back to the mountains again to Katoomba. And Dad told me that it wasn't until he was 14 that he remembers being together with his parents and living as a family for the first time. And I think that these early experiences instilled in Dad a great love of family, probably something of a need for family, and a love and a need for place and home. And indeed his great devotion to number 6 Kalang Road, a house he built himself in the 60s and lived with until his death, is a testament to that. And Dad always said that they'll carry me out of here, and true to his word, carry him they did. But before I go much further into Dad's story, just indulge me, if you will, a quick detour into a bit of Dad's ancestry, an ancestry that I think helped give shape to who he was. On his mother's side, Dad's family is a rich and varied tapestry, Scots, English, New Zealanders, and there's even a Danish sea captain who travelled to Australia in 1840. But a common thread among them, however, is craftsmanship. And there were gunstock makers, seamstresses, tailors, sign writers, and there were also several clock makers in his family tree, something that may explain his lifelong fascination with clocks and watches. And at last count, there were more than a dozen clocks in his mantelpiece, and like today, I'm wearing 2 of his watches. And indeed, in recent years, his neighbour of 50 years, Brian Carroll, would come over each fortnight, climb onto the kitchen bench to wind an old railway clock that Dad had restored. Thank you, Brian. You've been a terrific neighbour to Dad. This rich craft history may also explain Dad's passion for woodwork, which was a consistent theme throughout his life. But I think it's also fair to say that Dad's other great interest was collecting woodworking tools. A tool collector, I was even tool maker, it's probably a more accurate description of Dad, and it didn't seem to bother him much whether these tools got used. The mere existence seemed to bring him great satisfaction, each with its place in a well-organised shed and garage. He once told me with great pride that a wood-turning lathe that he designed and assembled was the biggest of its kind in New South Wales. And it was big. I remember helping him install it 20 years ago and trying to manhandle 8-foot-long, 200-kilogram cast iron runners into place. But the fact, as his neighbour Brian reminded me the other day, that he'd only turned it on once or twice since seemed not to bother Dad terribly, or if it did, he never let on. On Dad's father's side, the ancestry story has always been a little bit more unknown. That is until recently, one of his in-laws popped in to visit Dad and gave him a well-researched copy of the family tree. And it turns out that the first Sedger set foot in this country and arrived by ship in 1825, and not of his own accord. His name was John Sedger, and he was sent down at Kent Sessions Court in England for robbery and sentenced to transportation to Australia. But John Sedger was not, in fact, Dad's direct ancestor. His biological great-grandfather, James, arrived 15 years later as a boy, aged 10, with his mother, Mary Osborne, on another convict ship, this time from Ireland. John, who had by now earned his ticket of leave, married Mary and raised young James as his own boy, James Sedger. Their descendants moved into the Fish River area near Oberon and lived, as far as we can tell, on the right side of the law. Although our grandfather did tell us that our great-grandfather apparently knew bushranger Ben Hall, so perhaps some old habits died hard. In any case, I think this rebelliousness, if you can call it that, this mistrust of authority, desire to do things his way, was very much a part of Dad's character and something, in fact, that the three of us admired in him greatly, perhaps secretly admired. But another thing we admired about our father was his intellect. As Josh mentioned, he was a lover of books. He was knowledgeable across a wide range of topics. He had a great ability with language, was an excellent orator and conversationalist, witty, charismatic and engaging. In fact, it's not unfair to say that he loved a good argument. He would happily start an argument even if one was not required. But luckily, for the most part, Lisa, Kath and I gave as good as we got, and at the very least, we learned a few debating skills from Dad. In terms of education, Dad sat and passed his matriculation exam at Avondale College, an Adventist finishing school in Currumbong. However, he was denied his leaving certificate due to a prank involving the theft of the church bell just before graduation. Perhaps his ancestry was still at play. But when the incident was raised at assembly the next day, the headmaster asked those involved to stand. And dutifully, or perhaps recklessly, only my dad owned up. And even though he was one of only 4 miscreants, he did not dog on his mates, and he took his punishment on the chin. And such was the character of our dad, the man you know as Kenneth Sedger. Impulsive and willful for sure, but also with a sense of right and wrong, of taking responsibility for one's actions. After college, Dad joined the New South Wales Public Service and worked for almost a decade in the Justice Department in Manly, in Leighton North Sydney. And though he had enrolled in the Solicitors Admission Board program with the intention to study law formally, he realised that professional life was not really for him. Dad had an entrepreneurial spirit and was far better suited to doing his own thing. And it was around this time that Dad, being a self-described very eligible bachelor, met Barbara Bampton, our mum, herself independent and self-reliant woman who had moved to Sydney to broaden her professional nursing career. When they met, Barbara had recently bought a ticket to travel overseas, but Dad convinced her to stay and marry him instead. Although I understand the arrangement cost him £10, which was the incentive one was due to receive as part of the scheme to encourage Australian nurses to work in the UK. It was also at this time that Dad started his business career. He bought an old comma truck and helped my grandfather, who was running an orchard near Mudgee, to cart apples to Sydney with a co-worker, Doug Marsh. Mum worked as the early childhood community nurse in the district, while for Dad, one truck became two became three, and within a few years, Dad had a transport business with half a dozen semis moving freight interstate between Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Adelaide. And despite the rough and tumble image that goes along with being an interstate truck driver, Dad did not fit the mould. I can still remember him in the evenings leaving to drive a 48-hour round trip across New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia, but being clean-shaven, hair perfectly combed, wearing a crisp collared shirt with tie and smelling of Brute 33. But one can only live away from home and survive on several hours sleep a night for so long, and eventually Dad, at my mum's insistence, sold his trucking business. Several other businesses followed, but one in particular, consistent with Dad, was singularly unique. It involved making a rare small wood of Middle Eastern origin that was favoured by the older generation of Lebanese Australians. It was called Bastoma, a cured and smoked beef with a hand-pasted coating of garlic, mince, cayenne pepper and spices, hung and left to dry. It was an acquired taste, to say the least. But it was a family business, and we, myself, Catherine, Lisa, Mum, Grandma and Grandpa, we all helped Dad at Dad's smelly goods factory, as we call it. And Dad was, by any measure, a terrific business owner and operator. He bought the small goods business from a slightly dodgy guy who was making the product in his home garage in Condell Park. But by the time he sold it, he developed a reliable and safe manufacturing process, increased his market and sales, including to the food hall at David Jones in the city, and built an altogether robust commercial operation. And by that point, Dad had effectively semi-retired, put most of his attention into fixing the house, extending the tool collection, buying and fixing Triumph cars, and generally enjoying his life. It was also that time where he seriously turned his attention to woodwork, and he qualified in TAFE in 4 disciplines: wood turning, cabinet making, French polishing and carpentry. The other students, the 18 to 19-year-olds, called him Grandpa, but Dad reliably scored pretty much 100% in most of his exams, and I think they were just in awe of him. The tools is not really fair. For his finishing project, Dad produced this beautiful piece of craftsmanship. As many of us are likely to see, an inlaid, polished Queen Anne vanity mirror and drawers, and he graduated from TAFE, so with the top of his class. As is often the case, however, things don't always go to plan, and his beloved wife, our mum Barbara, began to grow unwell and was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And this absolutely devastated our father. In her final months, he did his best to look after her as she became increasingly ill, such as getting modifications to the car so it was more comfortable for her to drive. But he couldn't stop the onslaught of this terrible disease, and she died in 1998, 20 years ago. And I'm not sure that Dad ever really recovered from her death. She was a companion and a soulmate to him, and he loved and missed her dearly. But Dad did remarry sometime later, a lovely lady he met here at this church, Anna Leopold, and had some good years together, and I know Dad enjoyed Anna's company and her cooking, particularly her famous Austrian Black Forest cakes, which always seemed to appear and his eyes light up when we'd visit them both with the grandkids. He also enjoyed a very special relationship with Elaine, who was a great companion and friend, and as he got older, a conscientious carer to him as well. And Dad really experienced a new lease of life with Elaine, and my sisters and I are very grateful to her for the care and kindness she showed Dad. Apart from his family, my sisters and I, David, Georgie and our 6 grandkids, Jack, Andy, Sean, Xavier, Eloise and Madeline, all here today, and his extended family of cousins and aunts. The other great abiding feature in Dad's life, has been mentioned already, was his faith. A 3rd generation Adventist, he remained a firm believer and churchgoer his whole life. He was actively involved in church life, regularly led lessons and prayers, and gave an occasional sermon. He loved challenging old ways of thinking in what he perceived as an overly doctrinaire view of Scripture. In his later years, he mellowed on some of the finer points of Adventist practice. He enjoyed the occasional glass of medicinal wine with his family, but he also knew where to draw the line. When he arrived in hospital last week, Lisa said, "Dad, do you want some dinner? There's some nice soup." He said, "Yeah, what kind?" When she told him it was pea and ham, Dad, despite being hungry, said, "I'd better not." We were pretty sure at that point he didn't want to try his luck. But in all seriousness, Dad's faith was probably one of the most important and enduring aspects of his life, and he enjoyed a vibrant and living spirituality right until the end. And I'm certain he was particularly comforted by the prayers of Josh and Pastor Bernard at his bedside. Thank you both for being there with Dad at that important time. And just winding down now, I'd like to share with you another quote, if I may, from Carl Jung. Displaying keen insight into the relationship between one's family and one's own soul. Jung said, "The greatest burden on the child is the unlived life of the parent." Or to put it another way, the greatest gift that the parent can give their child is to live their own truth and live it fully. And I believe that Dad, for the most part, lives his life this way. It would of course be disingenuous to say that he did not leave any unfinished business. I know that he sometimes lamented the fact he didn't finish his legal studies. And for Dad, it was really important that each of us, his 3 children, went to university. And I know he was very proud of the fact that between us, with 9 degrees, something a bit embarrassing, but, and counting, even worse. However, I honestly believe that his calling was elsewhere. To his interests, to his craftsmanship, he could repair or fix almost anything. To his family, to his faith. And he lived that life, that calling, entirely. And in doing so, he gave us space and freedom to pursue our own unique journeys. By living his own uniqueness, he bequeathed us his unique gifts. And just before we close now, we'd each just like to share with you some of the things that Dad taught us that will stay with us forever. Things about Dad that we will always remember about him.
A few of the things that I'll always remember about Dad, and a few of the things, the most important things that he taught me. So first, a couple of things that will always remind me of Dad. Whenever I see shiny shoes, I'll think of Dad. Dad had a thing about shiny shoes. I can remember as far back as my early primary school days, I would get into trouble if I was heading off to school and my boots were all scuffed and not polished. And I'll carry that with me to this day. "Hey Dad, I've got my best shiny brogues on for you today at the funeral." Dad loves singing and listening to choral music, and that's why we played that music at the beginning here. In particular, he used to listen to large choirs, mass choirs with hundreds of voices. And in the 70s and 80s, when everyone else was listening to ABBA, in my house, we grew up listening to Dad's choral music. Played loudly, usually Welsh male choirs, and so I'll never be able to forget Dad whenever I hear a choir singing, just as I'll never be able to forget Mum whenever I hear the bagpipes. A couple of important lessons that Dad taught me, which will be relevant for everyone here today, regardless of your age. Never sign a blank document or a partially completed document, and never sign anything without reading it. To this day, I never leave any blank lines on a document or form. I always put a line through the blank space, and I always read the small print. Surprising how many times I find myself reading through a document when people hand me something and say, "Just sign here." Dad taught me to stand up for myself and to stand up for what I believe in. Dad role modelled this to us kids. But Dad went about this probably in a bit of a different way to the way I go about it, where Dad might have raised his voice and become quite maybe intimidating at times and authoritarian as a tall male man. My Myself being a bit shorter of stature, I tend to speak more quietly and certainly less forthrightly, but certainly no less forthrightly. Some of you here probably witnessed some of that at the hospital last week when Dad wasn't getting the care that he should have been getting. I didn't hesitate to say what needed to be said and to ensure that Dad was getting the treatment that he needed at that time. When I was a young adult, Dad and I used to argue quite a lot because we both argued for what we believed was right, and we often had quite different views on things. But very soon we agreed to disagree and then just continued on with what we were doing together because we realised that we were both just standing our ground on what we believed in, and we just believed something different to each other. Lastly, Dad taught me to work hard, not to be afraid of hard work, and to never give up, to persevere. Everything Dad achieved, he achieved through hard work and perseverance. He taught me the value of personal reward of hard work, and this is something I learned from Dad and that I hope I've passed on to my kids. Thanks for everything you've taught me, Dad. Rest in peace.
Life lessons that I still have and will always have with me that I've learnt from my father. Dad taught me to tell the truth and to stand up for the unsupported. He taught me by his example to be my own person, to be independent, to follow my dreams no matter which way that path took me. He taught me that it never hurts to be generous. He taught me manners, to dress well for important occasions, such as this, and to respect my elders. He taught me to be a warrior and to toil and work hard until the job is done, until it is fully completed. And he taught me the joy of a good argument and simultaneously to maintain a good sense of humour.
Just finished now. Dad always told me that when using screws, make sure the heads are finished off all facing the same direction. He also taught me how to properly pack and tie down a trailer. He told me to look people in the eye, to shake their hands firmly. He taught me to be generous with your time and with your attention. He taught me to have an opinion, to be prepared to argue for it. And he taught me to know that when times get tough, I'm able, as he did, to reach inside and find the strength to keep fighting on. Dad, thank you for everything you've done for us. We wish you Godspeed in your journey into and through your new mystery.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see clouds of white and skies of blue, the bright blessed days and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, and I will watch them grow. They'll know much more than I will ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. What a wonderful